And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ask the Theologian on this Friday. Sorry we're a few minutes late, but we always give you a few extra on the end to make sure you get your money's worth. And we are very delighted that you are here today for the final session of the week. And we, once again, start with Manny in San Antonio. Would you explain what is a fallen world and what is 70 AD? These are excellent questions, and remind me that I often will use these terms. We live in a fallen world, and I often will refer to 70 AD, but I don't very often explain exactly what is it that we live in a fallen world and what exactly happened in 70 AD. Let's talk about those two things here. And in the fallen world, that is basically the way of saying that we live under the curse of Genesis chapter 3. And in that particular curse, of course, you remember that, working by the sweat of your brow and the pain in childbirth and the number of things that took place. But the basic issue of the fallen world is that we are separated from God and that creation itself groans, as Paul said in the book of Romans. So creation, as we have it today, is not creation as God made it. Creation as we have it today has built within it part of the curse. I think, by the way, that you could probably say the second law of thermodynamics is part of the curse. The second law of thermodynamics is fundamental to physics and to the way our world works today. And the idea of second law of thermodynamics is everything is crumbling, everything is decaying, everything is falling apart. All of this is because of the fallen world, the curse. I might say that this greatly affects our worldview because though we believe that general revelation will give you some insight into God, we do not believe that you can discover who God is from creation. Because if you study creation, what you will come to discover is you will make conclusions based upon what you see. But only by revelation will you know that what you see is not what the Creator originally made. What you see is under a curse. So we get together. I see my mug's in the wrong place there. We just need to fix that, don't we? Don't want to bother anybody through there. There we go. Now we're ready to go. What you see is one of these things that struggles with the curse and the problem of the curse and the issues of the curse along. So when we say the fallen world, basically we mean a world that has dysfunction, a world that has disorder, a world that has disease. And in that we have the I'll call it everlasting struggle. It is the struggle that will end when Messiah comes and establishes his kingdom. And then at that point, things are better. Now, that's the fallen world. So basically, sin, sickness, suffering is a result of being cast out of the Garden of Eden. The fallen world is our ultimate problem. Then we have the issue of 70 AD. I think 70 AD is really probably the pivotal point in history. Maybe you could say, even though history centers around approximately the birth of Christ in BC AD, the year 70 AD was a year that theologically changed everything. You remember on our chart on transition here that we close out the transition in the year 70 AD. The reason 70 AD is because, and again, this is one of the most fundamental dates in all of history, 70 AD is when the Romans destroyed the city of Jerusalem and destroyed the kingdom of Judea. And so there was from 70 AD onward, there was no Jewish nation. Now, there were Jewish people, obviously, but there was no Jewish nation. Prior to that time, even though they were controlled by the Romans, and before that the Persians, and before that the Babylonians, even though they had that, I skipped the Greeks, pardon me. Even though they were under someone else's control, they still had, for example, Herod, king of the Jews, because he was king of Judea. And Judea was a Roman province of a completely Jewish flavor. And the Jewish people were able to lead their religious lives and make religious decisions really somewhat on their own. After 70 AD, there was no Jewish homeland. There was no Jewish nation. It simply did not exist. And the reason that this is so important is because God is going to establish the kingdom through the Jewish nation, but there is no Jewish nation through whom he could establish it, which means the offer of the kingdom is completely off the table until a Jewish nation returns, and I might say a Jewish nation that can make a spiritual decision. And I would say the modern state of Israel cannot make a spiritual decision. It's a secular nation. It's like the United States. It does not make spiritual decisions on behalf of its people. So still to this day, there is no kingdom offer, and will not be until Israel comes back in a new form, I think, in the future during the days of the tribulation, back to a form of, shall we say, a theocracy, or a form of which at least there can be governmental spiritual decisions which are made. The year 70 AD, I think it's such a fundamental date in world history. I appreciate that. Thanks for the question. Now, I promised, and I got a little off because I had to wait for a computer to update. I promised I would start with Russell's question, so I made it number 2. Russell and Kent has a question about Titus chapter 1, verse 12. Asking, what is a slow belly? Titus chapter 1, verse 12. Paul is speaking. He says, one of themselves, even a prophet of their own, said, the Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, and slow bellies. This witness is true. Therefore rebuke them sharply. Now, this line right here, the Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, and slow bellies. If you're using critical race theory, this gives a few extra points to Cretans. This is an interesting, kind of paradox of logic. The Cretans, let's pull this up again. One of themselves, so this is a Cretan. A Cretan said, Cretans are always liars. This witness is true, which means Cretans can't always be liars, because it must be a lie that Cretans are always liars. You see the interesting circular logic that takes place in that little phrase. But clearly, this is an issue of speaking poetically. The Cretans are always liars. Does that mean Cretans never tell the truth? It's the truth that Cretans are always liars, maybe. So there must be some degree of truth that is told. Obviously, it's a poetic form of speech. Paul is quoting. He's quoting from one of themselves. He does not tell who this prophet of their own, this Cretan prophet was. Perhaps with some research we could discover it, and says the Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, and slow bellies. Now the question here is, what is a slow belly? I would have to say that we have every degree of evidence that we are talking poetically. So when you're talking poetically, it doesn't necessarily, in fact, it almost never is to be taken literally. Slow belly. But let's go ahead and look at the words here on slow belly. First of all, the word is argos, which is not the word for slow in speed. Argos is, let's back up a little bit in the root there. The root is ergon. Ergon is the word for work, especially productive work, ergon. We get the word from closer in the root words, we get the word energy. We get the word even closer, ergonomic. Something that is ergonomic is very productive. It, you're not wasting space getting around through all this. So ergon is to work. Now, this is not the word ergon. This is the word argon. Argon is ergon with the Greek letter alpha, the A, in front of it. Now, that would be ergon, ergon. And as often happens in the English language as well, it happened in the Greek, when you put two vowels together, one of them tends to disappear. And so ergon became argon, argon. Now, that is ergon negated. Therefore, argon is, this thing doesn't do any work. You have ergonomic and argonomic. Or you look at some employees and you say, there's ergon, there's argon. In fact, those of you who have workers out there, you might, want to take maybe your most productive worker and just say, hey, I got a nickname for you, Ergon. I'm going to call you Ergon. And then one of your most lazy workers, you say, hey, I got a nickname for you. I'm going to call you Argon. Ergon and argon. Now, don't tell them what it means. Just say, I don't know, I just kind of like it, ergon and argon. And eventually, someone will come along and say, ergon and argon, I get it. That's the person you should promote to management. Not necessarily ergon, unless he gets it. And probably not argon. But the other guy over there that you didn't take that says, ergon and argon, that's perfect. Give them the management job because they're well-read. They understand a little Greek. They are thinkers. They're thinking, why did the boss call them ergon and argon? And that, there's my secret for how to choose the next management. Just free advice there, Russell. But argon is, it could be translated lazy. In fact, probably many times is lazy. In fact, I notice the Young's Literal does translate it lazy. So here, King James translates it slow. And then the word bellies right here, if you look at that in the Greek, gasteros. Gasteros. Well, we get gaster and the belly. In fact, what do you call a belly doctor, a gut doctor? You would say he's a gastroenterologist, he's a gastro something. That belly doctor. The things that have to do with the belly are gaster, and here gastress. So someone who is, how do you the belly is probably, belly or gut is going to be the best term for it. So a slow belly, or as Young's Literal has, a lazy belly. Now, obviously, that's speaking of poetic. It's not talking about you need to see the gastroenterologist because there's a very slow, digestion taking place in you, and we need to speed that. It's obviously not a medical or scientific term. It is some sort of a poetic means of saying these guys sit around all day and don't do anything. And I see Edith says her dad named one of his cows Slow Belly, which says Edith's dad is a student of the word. There's so many things that you can find about a person by nicknames and things like this. So he knows the word, and he says, slow belly out there. Maybe it's a term of endearment, or maybe it's just, this cow's always the last one into the barn. This cow's the slow one. This cow's the one that's going to, maybe he's a little stubborn. This cow's the evil beast, but I don't want to call him evil beast, so I'll call him slow belly. By the way, let's see. Cacatheria. I don't know. I was trying to think if you could somehow, give him the Greek name, Cacatheria. But it doesn't sound all that good, so probably not. Stick with slow belly and say, he's also a Cacatheria, an evil beast. Now, all of that this is a guy who's untrustworthy, doesn't get anything done. And the whole thing, again, is poetic. The Cretans are liars, evil beasts, slow bellies. I would say this is probably a fairly well-known line of poetry that you could use in a general sense, like in the United States today, or probably in the Western world. You could take things like, Robert Frost, I suppose, and you could say, I believe it was Robert Frost, wasn't it? I took the road less traveled. And you could say that, and, I had this huge decision and I took the road less traveled. You could say that, and average society, decently well-read society, would know it has nothing to do with traveling. It was, the more risky road, or the more difficult road, or the longer road, and that's the road that you took. That's the pathway you took through it. Poetic way of speaking. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the road less traveled, and that has made all the difference. Paraphrasing Robert Frost. So I think this is kind of that well-known poetic line that gets across the point that Paul is saying, untrustworthy, slow, lazy, not getting anything done people, rebuke them. Wherefore rebuke them sharply, that they may be sound in the faith. It is not sound in the faith to have these poetic words describe you. Now, if we were actually giving a literal description of the person, we probably would use other words. But this is to give a poetic description of the person. And that describes him all fairly well. I know we don't have any slow bellies here in our program, because we keep it going with high-level theology right here on Ask the Theologian, and you all are not slow bellies, and most of you are not evil beasts. We get accused of it sometimes, don't we? It reminds me of our governor here in New Mexico. Michelle Lujan Grisham, or Michelle Wuhan Gruesome, whatever it may be. And she was talking the other day about the lizard people. Let's see. Here, I'll just pull this one right at the top. There we go. It's Fox News. I haven't watched Fox News since last November, I guess. But New Mexico Dem governor slams protester as lizard people as she announces re-election bid. So some of us might be evil beasts, lizard people. Incidentally, it has, you can now get, it didn't take long at all till you could get the t-shirts and the bumper stickers of being a lizard people. Let's see here. There we go. Lizard People 2022. Or there's Lizard People defeat MLG. The Lizard People cap there. There. Look at all the you could get the little Lizard People mugs. Let them eat. We've talked about this one before. Wagyu, I believe is how you pronounce it, because the governess. While nobody could even go to the grocery store, she was having Wagyu beef brought into the governor's mansion. Lizard people. So maybe we've got some lizard people, but we don't have any slow bellies and we don't have any evil beasts. And I don't know if we have any Cretans or not. I have been to the Isle of Crete, and my tour guide on the Isle of Crete was a Cretan, and so I assume that everything he told me was false, because Cretans are always liars. Evil beasts and slow bellies. Poetic. Thank you for the good word there. I appreciate the question, Russell. Thank you. And let me see here. Boy, I got lots of questions on this Friday. I better hurry up and get with it through it. Let's go with Ives, our friend down in the Philippines. What does the word just mean in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 7? And let's read the passage first, and then I'll add to the question that Ives gives. And delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. Okay, delivered just Lot. We have to be careful in English anyway. The reason we have to be careful in English is because just has a, what do you call it when two words sound the same but mean something different? Is that a synonym? Not a synonym. Whatever that word is, the word just can mean only, and the word just can mean righteous. So if you're not careful, you could say he delivered only Lot from the English, but that's not what it means. And the Greek helps us here, because the Greek is diakonon. It is the word righteous. Now, righteous and just is the same thing. And to go back to the screen here, if you noticed here, just Lot, for that righteous man, same word right here. That righteous man dwelling among them, and seeing and hearing vexed his righteous soul. Now, the King James, again, tries to have very good spoken English, and it helps to break up those words a little bit. So instead of delivered righteous Lot, for that righteous man vexed his righteous soul, they changed one of these to just, which in English, obviously, just is righteous. And justice is righteousness. So just means righteous. Now, let's go on in the question. Does it mean that Lot was justified before God? And if so, how? Does it mean that he was the only delivered person? And this is where Ives picks up on this English oddity here. It was he's the only delivered person with his daughters in the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And an interrelated question, was he the righteous man in the succeeding verse, chapter 2, verse 8, or was it Noah from verse 5? Okay, all show us that Ives is not a Cretan evil beast and a lazy belly. He is one who is digging into the Word of God and saying, hey, okay, I want to understand this. So, just does not mean only. Even though, he was, as Ives says, he was only delivered along with his daughters. And, maybe you could read that and say, well, the daughters weren't counted because they were part of the family of Lot. And so Lot being delivered includes his daughters who are part of him, so to speak. Maybe you could stretch to get only, but the Greek takes that away. And this is why, by the way, I think everyone should have at least a Strong's Concordance or an interlinear or something that helps them to check that underlying word. Because, again, in English, it could be only, but in Greek, it's not that. It is righteous. Okay. Now, does this word mean he was justified? The exact same Greek word is sometimes translated justified. Justified is a verb we do not have in the English language a verb for righteous. Righteous is a noun, but how do you become righteous? We don't have that verb. If we had that verb, it might be something like righteousified. He was righteousified, and therefore he was righteous. Now, we don't have it, so we go with justified. Justified means righteous, and they are the same. I think it's we really need to come up with a verb form for righteous. We would have to say something like, to be made righteous. He was made righteous. He was righteousified. And you run into this a lot in the book of Romans also, because the word justified, righteous, righteousified comes up many times. Be nice if we could, create could we just become the committee for the creation of English words? Let's think about this. Maybe we should start something. But there is no word. Now, does it mean he was justified before God? I don't think so. And let's just put out there for a side comment someday that there was no justification like we have today, but people in the Old Testament certainly were justified from time to time. And Abraham, for example, was justified by his works. James says this. So he was righteous. The Lord delivered righteous Lot. Not necessarily justified, but in the context of who is in Sodom and Gomorrah, he is the righteous man, and he is going to be delivered from this. This gets into Calvinism, by the way, who says, that there's the total depravity of man, and mankind is also utterly corrupt and radically corrupt, that you couldn't use the word righteous for anyone, and yet the Bible does use the word righteous for some. He delivered righteous Lot. And again, that's how the Young's Literal has it, righteous Lot. The same is used for Abel. The term is used for Abel in a different, Cain and Abel, in a different setting. Now, for the last part of the question here, so he's just or righteous Lot. The last part of the question is he the righteous man of verse 8, or would it be Noah who is the righteous man of verse 8? Let's go back to verse 5. Spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, the preacher of righteousness. Now, a little bit of biblical numerology in there in the starting again number. So Noah, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the ungodly and turning the cities of, this is God. God was bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly, and God was turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes. So he puts two stories together here. Turning the city of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an ensample to those that should live ungodly, and delivered righteous Lot, almost a contrast with ungodly. So they should live ungodly, but delivered not necessarily godly Lot, but Lot was living not in the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah, just, righteous. Delivered Lot, vexed with filthy conversation. For that righteous man, again, are we talking about Lot, who's the closest, or are we talking about Noah, who's up here, this preacher of righteousness? That righteous man dwelling among them in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. The word vexed here is the word to torture or torment. Basanos is the word. It was used, a word that was used to show true gold. fake gold, true gold, was taken with a black basalt stone, basanos is the word here, and to take, let's see here, I got a quarter here, and you take the black basalt stone and just here, I got black right there, scrape it on there. And on the basalt stone, the real gold was going to leave a golden line. The fake gold was not going to. And so basanos became the word for torture, because basically it's the idea of you scrape it on there. And what do they do in a period of torturing someone? They find a way to scrape them to bring out the truth. If there's any gold in there, we're going to put them on the basalt stone and see if we can get it out. So the word vexed here is a word for torture. So he tortured his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. Now, the truth is that this would describe definitely Noah and possibly Lot. Now, the reason we would struggle a little bit is, again, we would say, did Lot really have a righteous soul? Lot was righteous in his behavior, as far as we can tell, living in Sodom. Did he have a righteous soul? I think that we have to take God's opinion of it and say, okay, he did. We didn't like everything Lot did, but there's enough evidence in the scripture to say he did. And we'll take it at that. We'll not be the judge on that. We'll let God be the judge on that. Now, I think the most natural reading is to say verse 7 is a parenthetical for verse 8 is a parenthetical for verse 7. Therefore, the righteous man is Lot. But you could argue that it does go back to, wait, no, we're talking about the righteous man is actually Noah here. And I would personally say on this that because both could have a decent argument, both have a little going against it. Noah going against it has the fact that he's 2 verses away. Lot going against it has the fact that he appeared to be somewhat self-serving in the way he was living his life, and so all this righteousness we would rather put on Noah than we would on Lot. So neither one of them are a foolproof argument, and both of them might have some degree of doubt. And which one is it? I think probably we have to look at it and say, go for try both of them, and then come to a conclusion on which you want. So far, I'm going to go with Lot, but when we get into 2 Peter, I'll look at that closely and see if we should change that in any way. I appreciate your question. Ives, God bless you, in San Fernando, Pampango, the Philippines. Now let's make our way down to Georgia. No. Let's make our way down to South Carolina. We have Jim in Georgia and we have Jim in South Carolina. Why doesn't everybody have their own name? To me, it looks like the hatred for Netanyahu seems to be the glue holding the new coalition together. With him out, do you think the coalition will last? And have you spoken to Boaz about it? So I would agree that the glue holding this together is hatred for Netanyahu. In the word hatred, let's pack a lot into that. Let's say they're just tired of Netanyahu. They may think Netanyahu's corrupt. He's had corruption charges put against him. They may not like his policies, which have been very good for Israel, by the way. And they may not like his conservative policies. So all of that in various realms of hatred is the word we're going to use. It is their animosity towards Netanyahu that's holding the coalition together. Now, I might say that you possibly could add one more thing to it. There may be those who say Netanyahu was good for the day. I would be fine with Netanyahu today, but Netanyahu simply cannot get a coalition together. And we've tried for 2 years to get a coalition together under Netanyahu, and it's not happened. And so in order to have a government in a parliamentary system, there's got to be a coalition. And so I am going to throw Netanyahu under the bus just in order to move on. I'm tired of the whole thing. I'm ready to move on. And some of that may not necessarily be a hatred for Netanyahu so much as a part of, hey, it's Netanyahu had his day and it's not working anymore. And they're going with it for that reason. Now, with him out, will the coalition last? I am no expert on Israeli politics, if there is such a thing, because Israeli politics is probably more random than U.S. politics. But will this coalition last? My speculation is I doubt it. And the reason is it's a coalition of misfits. They are strange bedfellows. They don't necessarily go together. And a parliamentary system, which we don't have in the United States, but most of you in the rest of the world have, a parliamentary system, its benefit is it requires strange bedfellows to come together. You got to keep the majority. And so, okay, with lots of compromise going on there. The flip side of that, the negative side of that is, quick as a New York minute, they're going to find a way to get a better coalition or a coalition that serves their purposes more than the current one. So I think that this coalition will not last, but in a sense, I put that kind of to the parliamentary system. The parliamentary system is made not to last. Now, in one sense, again, I'm going to go play, every side of this coin that I can play. In one sense, that's a kind of a negative to a parliamentary system. Is they tend to turn over a lot. They tend to change a lot, and the American system somewhat changes. Every 4 to 8 years on schedule, it changes. The parliamentary system doesn't really have that schedule, and so, at least from an American point of view, it's kind of always sort of a tentative system. Now, maybe in the positive there, I'm always kind of a friend of dysfunctional government, and the reason is that government, when it works with perfect harmony, we are in danger. The government is going to hurt us. So I don't think this coalition will last. I think Netanyahu's done. I think he's a cooked goose. He might even go to prison, believe it or not. Now, will that be justice? Probably not. I suspect, and I could be wrong here, but I suspect the charges against him that may be brought against him in a court of law, and then they'll come up. I suspect that that is the kind of governmental thing that we understand in the United States. There are so many laws, and especially when it relates to finances, that it literally, the government can, because of the way they put all these laws, they could take any of us and find us guilty and put us in prison and use the laws against us. This is one of the huge problems of the American tax code, and I think it's everywhere else as well, is just that it is so utterly impossible to know and understand that if they want to, they will find a way to put you in prison. And they can do that. And they might do that for Netanyahu. In some sense, I doubt it, but maybe. Does that mean Netanyahu's guilty? No, it means Netanyahu is caught by the system. And he's no more guilty than the rest of them. It's kind of like, Richard Nixon resigning, and, he could have gone to prison had it not been for the pardon of Gerald Ford. And, was Richard Nixon a crook? He told us he was not a crook. Deep Throat told us he was a crook, and all those kind of things, and what went on there. And if that were to happen today, would it affect anything? Well, not if he was a Democrat, it wouldn't. And it probably wouldn't have then. It was 99.9% political. I think that's what we've got in Israel as well. In the arena, to use the words of Teddy Roosevelt, the man who's in the arena just has to know that that's part of it. And honestly, even to the United States, it's coming to the point that if you put yourself in politics, one, you're going to be totally abused by the press. Two, you might go to prison. Being even a good and righteous man doing good things for your country, you might be a prison. You might go to prison. They will twist and turn and pervert and do things against you. So that may all happen to Netanyahu. If I were Netanyahu and it was happening, I would say, this is what happens to people in the arena. I gave my country good service. I protected my country. I can die looking myself in the mirror and say, you did what was right. So I'm willing to pay the price. Hopefully that's Netanyahu's view on it, if it does come to that. Now, what will happen is the coalition will probably fall apart, because the coalition, again, is glued together by this let's be done with Netanyahu view. I have spoken to Boaz about it, but not in the most recent days. I've spoken to him about Netanyahu about it, and some of what he says obviously filters my mind. I haven't spoken in the last few days to see exactly what his most current thoughts are. I appreciate that. And thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's see. Who said, was it Gerard? I should go back to this comment here. I want to go to the form of sound words comment here too. Or was it Cliff? No, it's Gerard. Yeah, Gerard, there, I found it. Had to look for that. Very nice clothing, Brother Randy. Nice cufflinks. Looks a lot like me. I always wear dark blue suits. Why, thank you. Except that it's a black suit. And I do have the canyon. I am keeping the canyon in the tie. I've never heard it called a canyon before yesterday. And the cufflinks. I actually only have one, what do you call it, French cuff shirt. I would say in the United States, they're not that popular, except maybe in, I don't know, kind of the Wall Street crowd, or the wedding, you're going to a wedding. You really want to look extra nice. But for the preacher, they're always maybe a little bit over the top. So I only have one. I've had it for years and years and years. I think I got this shirt in 2003, to tell you the truth. And honestly, I only have this one set of cufflinks. Some of you will really like this. But that's the only cufflinks I've got. It's the flag of the state of Texas. And, of course, I got them in Texas. And they really don't match this shirt very well, because the shirt has little purple and gray stripes on it. And I used to just have some silver cuffs, but they were the really, really cheap kind, and I think they broke. They weren't silver. They were like, plastic kind of look with silver and diamonds. But I got these as a gift somewhere, and they're nicer cufflinks, and I wear them because it's the only ones. How's that? Now you know the back of the story. Orange men wear blue suits. I do like a blue suit, actually, and this is my Marion and Berrien suit, and I'm not marrying and burying anyone today. Usually, however, I don't have it within reach. Usually, when I'm marrying and burying, I've got a black and silver tie. black and silver, and I'll wear the white shirt, and that goes with anything. You're in the wedding, you match them. You're in the funeral, you look dignified. So I got the Marion and Barian suit on today. Now, I want to go, it's a little out of order, but the form of sound words. I think I had a question the other day. I want to go to this question, and what I noticed was the comment. I'm going to use the comment first, and then I'll go to the question. The comment is Netanyahu is done because the tribulation starts this year. That's why. Now it's a Muslim coalition, and that's where the Imam Mahdi, what do they call him, the 13th Imam, will pop up. I disagree with the premise there, that the tribulation starts this year. I think that we have absolutely zero knowledge of when the tribulation will start. And we don't need any knowledge because we're going to be raptured out of here. Now, for the form of sound words here, if we get into, let's say, 2022, and it hasn't started, I just want you to remember, Randy said we have no clue. And maybe Randy's right and I'm wrong on the tribulation starting this year. Now, if it starts this year, we're going to be raptured first. And I would say we could be raptured and it doesn't even start this year because it doesn't have to start immediately upon the rapture. But there's nothing to go on to say it starts this year. There's nothing more than to say it started last year or that it's going to start 15 years from now. We are not given that part of the formula. So we don't know when the tribulation starts. And the tribulation definitely will start someday. Will it be this year? It could be. Will it be next year? It could be. Will it be, who knows when? It could be. We just don't know right now. So I would say then the issue with it, Netanyahu associating it together, I would not associate that together. Now, let me take one of the questions here from the form of sound words. With that, any advice? There's a number of good questions here. Thank you, form of sound words. Any advice on how I can walk more in the Spirit and put on the new man more and more? And any advice how to, excuse me, produce the fruits of the Spirit in my life? I'm gonna combine that with two questions to get the form of sound words together here. How is the mark of the beast enforced in the world? Because when Jesus returns, he will gather all nations and they will be judged on the giving of the Jews of food and drinks, clothing, in order to go in the kingdom. You're exactly right there, that when Jesus returns, he gathers together the nations, and in one simple form, you separate them out between mark of the beast and not mark of the beast. And I'll come back to the fruit of the Spirit here in just a moment. And the mark of the beast, how is that enforced? I think it's enforced by the Antichrist. He's the one, he and his coalition is the one that will work to carry out, to make sure that everyone is carrying out or getting the mark of the beast. Now, he will use business corporations, the corporation, in its most technical sense, the government using the corporation for its bidding is what fascism is. And so I would say he'll be a fascist. He'll take the corporations and say, now, in order for you to get a business license, which unfortunately, even in the United States, we've allowed the government to, say who can do business and who can't. And there's a little bit of fascism in that. in order for you to get a business license, a reseller's license, the ability to carry on business, you're going to have to get the mark of the beast, and you're going to have to enforce the mark of the beast. You're going to have to, say, sorry, we don't sell if you don't, wear the mark on your face, and so, you're out. I have come to the place, this is a little incidental because a face mask is not the mark of the beast, but I have come to the place where I simply won't go to a business. If they are going to require me to wear a mask, I just say, no thanks. There's other places that sell this stuff. You guys aren't the only one. But even in that, I'm rare. Most will say, yeah, okay, I'll put it on. And so we see how easy it is for government to use business to enforce what government wants. And there are going to be very few who will go against that with the mark of the beast. So it's the government influence upon the corporation. Now, here's the issue with that. There's always going to be somebody stubborn. I'll be raptured out of here, but I'm not the last of freedom lovers. I'm not the last of those who believe in independence and personal liberties. And some people who believe in independence and personal liberties aren't saved. A lot of people are, but there are some people out there who are just doggedly libertarian independent, who are not saved, who are going to say, I don't care who he is. I don't care how strong he is. I'll starve before I will submit myself to these. There's Patrick Henry was saved, but there's going to be those Patrick Henrys. Those will say, give me liberty or give me death. It's those people then that are going to end up on the positive side of all that. Now, to the previous question, any advice on how I can walk more in the Spirit and put on the new man more and more, and advice on how to produce the fruit of the Spirit in my life. I'm guessing, and I don't know this, but form, sound, words I would love to know. I'm guessing you are a younger man. Is that true? I just guess that by the kind of the wording of the question, and I could be totally wrong there. Because an older man could ask the question as well. But sounds like a young man who wants to study the Word and grow in the Word and be pleasing to the Lord, and is learning prophecy and is learning the Word. So God bless you. Any advice how I can more walk in the Spirit and put on the new man more and more? I think that we are told, of course, to quench not the Spirit. We ought to look in our lives and say, okay, is there something in my life that really is kind of choking off the Spirit? I am feeding the flesh, and the more you feed the flesh, the more hungry the flesh becomes. The flesh becomes this monster that you can't feed. It's kind of like don't feed the bears. Why not? Well, they're so cute, and at first they don't hurt you that much. They just, you throw them a bone or whatever, you give them a little bit of something to a honey pot out there to eat. It's all well and good. The problem is the bear comes back. And the bear brings his buddy, and the bear gets hungry, and the bear says, he didn't feed me. I'm going to break in there and I'm going to feed myself. And the bear takes over. Well, the flesh is the bear. And so on walking in the Spirit, I'd say watch what you feed. If in what you read and what you listen to and what you look at, if you feed the flesh, you will quench the Spirit. And the flesh will become this monster. The flesh is not satisfied. The flesh is not, just this kind gentleman who says, "Oh, man, that's awfully nice for you to give me that little morsel. I appreciate this. Now I'll go on my way. I'm satisfied." That's not the flesh at all. The flesh said, "Feed me once, you feed me twice. Feed me little, you feed me more." And the flesh is this demanding monster that we have to control. Now, how do you control that? I think you feed the Spirit. The Spirit is a gentleman. The Spirit is the one that, if you don't put the food out, the Spirit doesn't come barking, doesn't come breaking the door down like the flesh does. Which means, the tyranny of the urgent is the thing that gets us. How about that? I knew I liked form. It's Ash in Buckinghamshire. Now I'm with us. So as we feed I could tell the right spirit was there. As we feed the Spirit, then we walk more in the Spirit. Walking in the Spirit is not something that is of total control of the Spirit. It is, I decide today I'm going to focus on spiritual things. I am going to focus on reading and learning the Word of God. I'm going to surround myself with some people that aren't going to lead me astray. I'm going to turn on some wholesome music rather than music which might distract and turn my attention to the flesh. And I am going to grow in knowledge. As we grow in knowledge, I think that helps us to do this. And then advice on how to produce the fruits of the Spirit. I would say it's just by walking in the Spirit. We have some fruit trees around here, an apricot tree right out there. And how does that apricot tree produce apricots? We prune it a little bit. We keep some water on it. We, hope that it doesn't get damaged by weather, external circumstances. We don't put poison into it. We take care of it. And naturally, it produces fruit. Now, the fruit of the Spirit is not natural, but it is a natural outcome of walking with the Spirit. And Jim reminds me of Philippians 4:8, which is sort of a summary of all that I said. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. And as you make that your focus, I want to learn something today. I want to grow some today. I want to be encouraged today. I want to be positive today. I want to be honorable today. As you do that, fruit comes forth from it. Thank you, form of sound words. We appreciate you. And let's go down to Rancho Cucamonga. What are your thoughts on why Paul sometimes said the gospel of God, the gospel of Christ, other times my gospel? Are they all the same? I don't think so. I think the gospel of God, is much closer to the eternal gospel than this mystery temporary gospel that you and I have. We're not under the eternal gospel. The gospel of God, I get this mostly from Romans chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. And the gospel of God, separated under the gospel of God, the gospel of God was promised afore by his prophets in the Holy Scriptures, concerning his Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. So the gospel of God is about Jesus Christ, but the gospel of God is the gospel of the kingdom, if you will. It's the gospel that his Son, Jesus Christ, is going to sit upon the throne. That's the gospel of God. Now, the gospel of Christ, we would have to look up and do a little analysis on that. I'm going to say also the gospel of Christ is just a little bit different take on this, a little bit different view on this, and the gospel of Christ is the gospel that Christ is the Messiah, the gospel of the Messiah, if you will, the gospel that Messiah is going to set up on his throne. Once again, different from my gospel. Now, there may be occasions in which you have to read those very closely and put those together and bring that in and try to carry that out correctly. But I think that we would do well every time we see the word gospel to pause and say, I've got to figure out which gospel this is. Is it the mystery gospel, or is it the kingdom gospel, or one of the, I think for the most part, we could separate them into some category of kingdom gospel or the Pauline gospel. And there are some various categories of the kingdom gospel, but they have a lot of similarities to them. So let's put them in the kingdom basket or in the grace basket and see which one it is, and carry those out. Bullinger has an appendix that speaks some to this. I wish that he would have, brought them out perhaps just a little bit differently. But he does have one. Let's see if I can find it here in the appendices to the companion Bible. Probably going to be down a ways. And let's get to some of the New Testament ones down here. Okay, the diversity of the four Gospels would be interesting, the unity and the diversity, but that's not what I'm looking for. The synonyms, one of these, if you look down, the Gospel of the Kingdom and Other Gospels, there we go. Appendix number 140 in the companion Bible, and that's the the enlarged print edition that I've got right here, and we sell at Dispensational Publishing, or you can get it electronically, or just go online and search for Appendix 140 companion Bible, and you'll find it. Now, he speaks of the everlasting gospel, the gospel of the kingdom. He speaks of, here's some illustrations of the gospel of the kingdom in some of the parables that he brings about. He speaks the gospel of God, the gospel of the grace of God, and then the gospel of the glory of Christ. Now, 5 gospels of which he speaks. Again, this is one appendix. How do you say that? Which is valuable, but I don't think is his best one. I think he could have said more and added some more to that. Thank you, Rancho Cucamonga. I appreciate being among ya. How's that? Paul up in Wisconsin. King, Wisconsin. Good to see you from the King Veterans Center, King, Wisconsin. Thank you for your service. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5. The question relates to, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations, is the verse. Paul says, Jeremiah 1:5 says that Jeremiah was ordained a prophet to the nations. Doesn't that make Jeremiah unique among the prophets, as most prophets were only prophets to Israel, with the exceptions of Obadiah, who went to Edom, Jonah, who of course went to Nineveh, Jonah, and Nahum, who went to Nineveh. Good student of the word, obviously, knowing all of that. Yes, it probably would be the criteria to make the assumption that we could put, along with Obadiah, Jonah, and Nahum, we could put Jeremiah. Now, a couple of things I would question in putting them in that category. One is that the vast majority of everything we have of Jeremiah's writings in Jeremiah and Lamentations, the vast majority is for Israel. And so we would look at it and say, okay, maybe I need to reinterpret unto the nations. Obadiah going to Edom, I can see it. Jonah and Nahum, I can very well see it. Well, Jeremiah seems to be the Jews over and over. Both Jeremiah and Lamentations is about the destruction of Jerusalem. And that's not so much about the nations. Now, with that then, I would say you can also take a number of the other prophets. You could take Amos, for example. You could certainly take Ezekiel. And there's a big chunk in the middle of the book of Ezekiel in which Ezekiel is talking about Tyre and Sidon and Egypt and Edom and Moab and Babylon. And, you've got, I don't know, maybe up to a third. That's perhaps a little on the high side. But 25 to 33% of the book of Ezekiel is actually an oracle to other nations. So I'd say probably we could find that in Jeremiah as well. I haven't done Jeremiah oracle by oracle as we've done the book of Ezekiel, but probably you could find that in Jeremiah as well. So that then wouldn't necessarily put them in the category separate from, say, an Ezekiel or an Amos. And an Amos also, he goes around the neighboring nations and then finally comes down to Israel and Judea. So the other way we could interpret this, a prophet unto the nations, this once again is that, we've got to do a little interpretation. Could that mean not only to the house of Judah, but also to the house of Israel, which at this point is scattered unto the nations? And we see that Ezekiel and Jeremiah were contemporaries. Ezekiel very much has a prophetic role to scattered Israel and thus to the nations. So with that, I would, I think I would be a little uncomfortable if we were to make a chart and say, these are the prophets to northern kingdom, southern kingdom, and the nations. It would be a worthy chart. And in the nations, you would certainly have Obadiah, Jonah, Nahum. But to put Jeremiah there because of this verse, I think you'd probably then say, okay, I got to include Ezekiel there because Ezekiel has just as much to the nations as Obadiah does, as Jeremiah does. And then you'd probably have, I got to include Amos in that because he speaks to the nations as well. So I think I would probably say Jeremiah's chief function was maybe even to Judah. Probably you could have a category for the full house of Israel and Judah together, which I think would fit Israel. Appreciate that. Paul up in King, Wisconsin. We got some Wisconsinites here in Taos this week helping us out, preparing for Vacation Bible School. We appreciate Madison and Cameron, who are here from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Let's see. I got so much here. I tell you what, I am going to take Dr. Tom's question because he's a pastor and he might need it for Sunday sermon. Who knows? So we'll squeeze Dr. Tom in here. Could you please share Paul's gospel of grace again, like last week from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, 17 through 21, and Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. I want to learn how to better share the gospel of grace. I don't remember exactly what I said on those verses, but I would be happy to because, I like there's an old hymn, Tell Me the Story of Jesus, I believe it is. And it says, has a little line in there. It says, stay, let me weep while you whisper. Love paid the ransom for me. Beautiful. And in that same hymn, or perhaps another one, it says, those who know it best seem longing to hear it like the rest. There is such a beauty in the gospel of grace. So, in sharing the gospel of grace as we conclude our program today, I would like to say that God has done this wonderful, mighty, amazing work of grace for us. And that is, in this day, according to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 19, he's not holding our trespasses against us. What good news this is, because I'm a person of trespasses. I don't know about you, whether you want to call it trespasses or iniquities or sins, abominations, whatever it is. I've got it in my life and you've got it in your life. And yours may be different than mine. Mine may be different than yours, but I've got them. And what a burden it would be if I had to go to bed every night thinking about, hey, there's a God, and God certainly wants me to live according to his criteria. And even if I can't figure out who that God is or what that God is or what, I'm certain that I haven't lived according to his criteria, because I've done some things which, even a lesser God, if there was such a thing, would never allow me to get through. I would have to, pay the price. There's this thing called justice, and I'd have to get it. But the good news is that our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God that created the heavens and the earth and that all that is, the God who's the creator and the sustainer, God has created this scenario right now in which, because of the death and burial and resurrection of Jesus Christ, he is now offering a gift. He's saying, hey, Tom, Vanessa, Edith, Tom, Dick, and Harry, Peter, Paul, and Mary, I'm not counting your trespasses against you. I'm giving you an opportunity to receive a gift. That gift is the gift of a restored relationship to me. I just give it to you. You can have it. You couldn't pay for it if you wanted to. You couldn't build a bridge back to me in order to come to me if you wanted to. You couldn't religiosity yourself to me if you wanted to. You've already proven that you're not up to the task for that. But I'm just giving you a gift. And that gift is made available because my son, Jesus Christ, went to the cross. And he was one who knew no sin. He was tempted in all ways like you are, and yet was without sin. Because he went to the cross, he became Lord both of the dead and of the living. Romans chapter 14, verse 9. As Lord of the dead and the living, all honor has been restored to God. Everything has been taken care of. Now I, as God, can do whatever I want. And what I want to do is offer to you a gift of eternal life, a gift of a restored relationship with me. Because of what Adam did, there's been temporary life separated from God. It's the life you were born into, temporary life separated from God. But here I am now giving a gift. I haven't always given this gift. I won't always give this gift. But right now, God says, I am giving this gift. What do you need to do? You need to accept it. How do you accept it? You accept it by placing your faith in the completed work of Jesus Christ. You're saying, I believe that God is graciously offering a gift that was paid for by the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And that, for now anyway, here he's offering the restored relationship. He's offering that heaven will be your home someday. He's offering that you can be in right standing with God. He's offering that your sins and you will never meet up again. That is, you'll not have to pay the penalty for your sins because Jesus Christ took them. The scripture says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21, he who knew no sin became sin on our behalf in order that the righteousness of God might dwell within us. So what we've got is Jesus came, and the sinless one is substituting for the sinful one. He who knew no sin, this is Jesus and this is me, he who knew no sin became sin on my behalf. in order that the righteousness of God might dwell in me. And now, if you receive this gift, you just say, okay, my faith is there. My faith is in Jesus Christ. I'm not trusting in Buddha. I'm not trusting in Mohammed. I'm not trusting in, Joseph Smith. I'm not trusting in my works of righteousness. I'm not trusting in my good looks and my great wealth or whatever. I'm not trusting in any of that. I'm only trusting in Jesus Christ. That's where my faith is. And honestly, what you're saying is, I put all my eggs in that basket. If that's not salvation, there is no such thing. Because that's the only thing I'm trusting in for salvation. Not in the church, not in the preacher, not in the religion. I'm trusting in Jesus Christ. Now, if that's where you are today, say, I'm trusting in Jesus Christ. Then I'd say, welcome to the family of those of us who now are in Christ. He became sin so that we might be his righteousness. Clothed in Christ we stand. And when judgment comes, Christ is all God will see. And we're judged in his name rather than in my name. Isn't that good news? Indeed it is. And I hope everyone in our program today has accepted that good news. We'll find a way to share that good news somehow, somewhere, some way. Thanks, Dr. Tom, for your missionary work in Cambodia. We appreciate that very much. Had a few questions and comments that I did not get through. I'll go through those and save the good questions save the questions, I should say it that way, for next week. Sunday morning, I'll be back 9:45 Mountain Time and 10:45 Mountain Time for 1 Peter, followed by one of 30 amazing Bible stories you may not know. It's been a delight to be with you here today. I appreciate that. Thanks for sticking around a little extra with us. From Taos, New Mexico to across America and around the world, wherever you are, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you soon.